morning, everybody. The Danube, I mean, a lot of things and problems were raised already. I don't know what to say now about the problems of large or small rivers, whatever. You have already seen from Gernot the Danube, part of the European network, here at the right-hand side, going to the Black Sea, and on the left-hand side, so western side, connected to the Rhine Basin. An axis through Europe of 3,800 kilometers, with the major seaports which were mentioned in the west, and also an important seaport at the Black Sea at the end. So that's the general situation of the Danube. As far as navigation is concerned, I just show you some pictures of typical vessels. You can see motor cargo vessels on the Danube, of course, but the normal situation is push convoys on the upper Danube with 2 barges, over 4 barges of most of the river, until larger ones, 9 barges, up to 9 barges in the locks, but even bigger convoys on the lower Danube, which are possible. And an important part also of navigation is steadily growing tourism with a high number of cruise vessels on the Danube in a nice landscape, as you can see. So, basically, like on the Rhine, it's an international waterway, free navigation, national duty of maintenance, according to the Belgrade Convention of 1948. The Danube itself, 2,415 kilometers navigable, at its mouth also a maritime part. About the fairway dimensions, you have seen the vessels, and important, of course, the canal connections to the seaport of Constanza on one hand side and to the Rhine Basin on the other side. 38 million tons of freight compared to the 300 million tons on the Rhine, which is much shorter, and the impressive number of currently 200 cruise vessels sailing a year on the Danube. You also can see here, I mean, the details about the sizes, but that it is a combination of impounded sections and free-flowing sections, more locks on the upper Danube, more free-flowing on the lower Danube. And maybe one impressive figure also for the upper Danube, it's really a mountain river there with a third of a meter per kilometer of gradient, which is quite heavy stuff for navigation. On the other hand side, we are talking about international things. So 10 countries sharing the riparian countries for the Danube, 10 independent countries. For the river basin, it's even 20 countries sharing that, which gives some kind of complexity. And I want to elaborate a little bit on that because I think that's important for the understanding of the Danube. If you look for the political situation, it's not just 10 countries, which is already much. 7 of these countries are member states of the European Union, 2 completely outside European neighborhood countries, and 1 candidate country. And if you look at the language mess, we have 8 different official languages in these 10 countries. And for the official languages, we even add French and Russian to that for the Danube Commission, and English for the Protection Commission. So it's a bit of exaggerated multilingual river, in fact. I also want to look a bit on the history. If you think about 30, 40 years ago, to understand that it's not only different languages, different situation now, but how it came to that. You have countries from Western alignment, classical Germany, neutral countries like Austria, the former Yugoslavia, the non-aligned countries. You have countries which were in the Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union aligned, and even 2 countries which were part of the Soviet Union until 1991, which makes quite a different history and economic situation in all these countries, which adds up to the complexity. So again, a bit history. It has a long history, and only quite recently, 1992, only the connection to the Rhine Basin, which changed also a lot, and then the dissolution of the Soviet Union, this one with the Kosovo War, where navigation was interrupted completely for a short while, but heavily for several years due to the pontoon bridge or bombing of the bridge in Novi Sad. And also the membership in the European Union, quite evolving still. The newest member, Croatia, only joined in 2013. So dynamics also in the political situation along the river. I think it's just history, but it's I think important to understand anything what we do and then what we can achieve. Some governance elements. The Danube Commission, the international intergovernmental organization of the riparian countries, with also Russia as a member, dealing with the regime of navigation. For the whole river basin, the protection of the Danube River, so the environmental and water point of view, another international commission. And as we have seen, many members of the European Union, we have European Union legislation which is widely applicable, including elements of strategy and policy. And there are other harmonization bodies on United Nations level for Europe, UNECE, and also the harmonization which was mentioned already by Gernot, which we are trying to with the Rhine Commission overall. What I think is very important, I mean, we are talking much here about navigation, that is clear, but for all the rivers, but especially for the Danube, there are a lot of additional values considered from the side of navigation, but really values among them also navigation. Unique natural heritage you can see along the Danube. I will give you some examples. We have a lot of options for tourism around the river, 4 capital cities on one single river, from Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, and Serbia. A cycle path along the river, very, very nice river valleys with touristic value, and history and culture through all the ages, from prehistory until classicism and modern things. Not to forget, of course, important part, energy production. In total, 28 hydropower plants along the Danube. And of course, many more values. I cannot enumerate them all. But also very important, the issue of threats by flood, which are nourishing some of the natural heritage, but which are dangerous for all the rest. So here you have an example of the famous Iron Gates part on the lower Danube, which is an enormous natural heritage and really touristic marvel. And you have, of course, at the end, an enormous area of the Danube Delta, which is a bioreserve and really also a worldwide marvel from natural heritage. You have the cities here, an example. The Danube looks like that in Budapest, in Hungary, so really in its middle. Or you have culture along the river, here an example from Serbia. And you have the power protection with 2 enormous power plants between Serbia and Romania at the end of the river. So after all, with summarizing, the Danube is really a, I would say, unique, multifunctional, and indeed very international resource involving many protected areas. And from the point of view of navigation, it is positively seen an available transport infrastructure with a lot of free capacity. Negatively, you could say it's underused. Yes, that is what we are trying to change. And it's really geographically well placed. I mean, east-west in Europe, areas where economic growth is expected. Road and rail are not very developed yet in these parts. And what we have in a lot of international cooperation, in spite of all the difficulties we have, and it's even growing for all the development of inland waterway transport. We have a lot of projects running on all the topics, all the areas which are necessary: infrastructure, fleet, education, information, marketing. There are really projects, multinational projects going on. And we also have somehow new now since this year also started, Lieven mentioned it, you always forget about maintenance. Yes, the fairway maintenance, the dry stuff, which is regulated internationally that it should happen. It never happened properly, but now there are new agreements on that. I will refer to that in another presentation anyway, that we also have on that an agreement. I can stop here or I can continue. Due to the schedule, I think let's keep that as a summary. Otherwise, I could show you some more pictures if you like. Yeah, okay, I mean, that's history. Some 50 years ago, it was towing. Now it is pushing. You see some history of towing still on the barges on the Danube, very characteristically that you see here the history. And really entering the private entrepreneurs from Western Europe over the canal into the classical fleet push or towing business of the Danube. The Iron Gate narrow stretches, very wide stretches between Romania and Bulgaria, here Ruse and Giurgiu, and even passenger transport on the Danube, in the Danube Delta mainly. Also you have fishing from water and from shore, and even you find shipwrecks from the Second World War in the fairway, and we stop with the real nature at the end. So Danube Delta at its best at the end of the war.